Hello everyone, Sergeant Argybright here, and today we're doing part 2 of Top 7 Red Army Myths by Military History Visualized. So, let's get straight into this.
Next is the myth of Operation Barbarossa being a preemptive attack against an upcoming Soviet attack. This would be an interesting topic. Yet due to it being mostly infested with people that have political agenda, it is just annoying to cover it all.
Okay, wait a minute. What's with that picture, though?
Yet, let's head into the hornet's nest. One initial problem is that the book and author usually brought forward is quite problematic. Yet, there are others that have similar views that seem to be more credible. The most outspoken proponent of the preemptive attack thesis is the pseudonymous Viktor Suvorov. However, the author's strident tone and wild conjectures, convict armies, plus his habit of piling circumstances upon circumstance, all greatly weaken his argument. More traditional in his approach, but no less firm in his convictions, is Mikhail Meltyukov, whose I definitely will not pronounce it, Stalin's Missed Opportunity, is an excellent and well-researched study of the events from 1939 to 1941 that deserve to be translated into English.
Okay, well, aside from that, it's really interesting. Shoot, I forgot what I was going to say. Oh, yeah. Stalin, he was more in favor of a socialism in one country sort of thing. While Trotsky was completely different. But yeah, Stalin, he really just wanted to. Well, of course, um, before World War II, he just wanted to get his old land back that he had in World War One, right? But then, of course, after World War II, Stalin saw opportunity, and that's why he grabbed all of the while he made all of those Eastern European puppet states. And well, I mean, the West was pretty much against him, and they wanted to declare war on him, so it makes sense. But anyways, yeah, Stalin was more in favor of socialism in one country, so I this definitely does make sense that that Stalin wouldn't want to attack Germany unless, like, given the right circumstances, they might. But yeah, that's just doesn't really align with Stalin's beliefs at this time. At the time, because of course later, after World War II, he became a bit more, international. If you could
I
call it
assume that this discussion likely will never end. So let's get some key points, which quite often get ignored. First, it is very common to have plans of all kinds of contingencies in every army.
That makes sense, yeah.
So the existence of one or even several plans is no proof that the Soviets were about to attack the Germans. Second, a preemptive attack from the German side requires that the Germans knew that the Soviets would attack. Yet we know that one of the planners of Barbarossa in August 1940 clearly noted, the Russians won't provide us with the love service of an attack. Additionally, we know...
Well, to be honest, Germany got a lot of things wrong about Operation Barbarossa. So, I mean...
that the German military intelligence was not the best. Namely, Fremde Heraust, Foreign Armies East, had very limited information on even the basic structure of the Red Army. The most urgent task, identifying the deployment of the Red Army in the border area, was solved by Abwehr 1. On the other hand, little was known about the situation in the interior of the Soviet Union because the Soviet counterintelligence service worked with great efficiency. The Russian population traditionally had reservations about strangers, and language difficulties did not permit the mass deployment of agents smuggled illegally across the border. Third, to conduct an attack, the Red Army would have to be in a far better operational state than it actually was.
Yeah, the USSR for a while would not be ready to attack Germany.
The Red Army's tank force was not in the best shape. 12,782 tanks were in the western military districts ready, supposedly, to engage the enemy. Of the tanks in the west, 10,540 were deemed to be in sufficiently good state of repair to remain with frontline units.
Oh my gosh, that's like more than 1/6 of their entire tank force to not be in a sufficient good state of repair. That is a lot. Wait a minute. Things in the west. Yeah.
Even with 8,383 apparently needed some sort of light repairs or servicing that was supposed to take place with these field units. Only 2,157 tanks were considered fully operational without any caveats. But even allowing for some of the light repairs being sufficiently serious to keep some of these tanks out of action and others breaking down as Soviet units moved up.
And even then, like, the Soviet tanks in general were not very good at the time. It wasn't until a while later, like a year or so later, where they started to develop T-34s in larger numbers.
The Red Army was still formidable. Similarly, there were many more issues. Fuel and ammunition were in short supply. Many tank guns were not bore-sighted and could not fire. And most of the mechanized corps' tank drivers had received minimal, if any, training.
Whoops.
As a result, 2 days after the war began, a battalion of KV tanks assigned to the 3rd Mechanized Corps, 2nd Tank Division, went into combat against the German 6th Panzer Division near Rashenia, Lithuania, with orders to ram the enemy tanks. Since it's
Wait, what?
Rashenia, Lithuania, with orders to ram the enemy.
Ram? Are they saying ram?
Panzer Division near Rashenia, Lithuania, with orders to ram the enemy.
Ram? Oh my gosh. That definitely tells you something.
Tanks, since its 30 KV tanks had not yet been bore-sighted and could not fire.
Wow.
To be a bit more specific,
that is interesting.
For 2 tank divisions, we have numbers on the fuel situation. The 33rd Tank Division.
Wait, then earlier that they were low on fuel. That does not make any sense to me. The Soviet Union had an incredible amount of oil, especially in the Caucasus. How are they lacking fuel? That does not make sense to me. Like, have they not gotten it there yet or something? Like, what's going on there?
And have numbers on the fuel situation. 33rd Tank Division had 15% of first-grade petrol, 4% of automobile fuel, and 0% diesel. And for the 31st Tank Division, we have 2% automobile fuel and 0% diesel as well. In other words, the Red Army was in a bad shape even for defense, and in no shape to conduct an offensive. In contrast, the Wehrmacht was at a state of very high readiness and combat effectiveness. Although there might have been various plans, clearly was.
Oops, I did something on accident.
Although there might have been various plans for the Red Army for an attack, the Red Army clearly was not prepared from the information that is available.
What does it say down there? USSR was not ready. Oh, okay.
Of course, before we get complete access to the Russian archives, we can't know for sure. Yet based on the current evidence, it seems very unlikely that Operation Barbarossa was a preemptive attack, since neither did the Germans suspect the Soviet attack, nor was the Red Army sufficiently supplied and equipped to do so. Let's move to the next myth, namely that the Red Army did not stop the Wehrmacht, but rather...
Wait a minute.
General Winter did so.
Oh my god, I love this one. Oh god, okay. Oh great, we get to see an ad.
in 1941.
Okay. Come on, hurry. Load. Wow. World of Warships seems very interesting. Oh my gosh, I love this one. No! The winter did not stop the Germans. What stopped them was poor logistics. The fact that the Germans underestimated the Soviets. And lack of resources. That's why.
This one goes back mostly to German memoirs and sounds.
Oh yeah, because the German generals would rather blame it on the weather than blame it on their own terribleness.
Quite intriguing at first, but after a closer look, it turns out to be just a cheap excuse. Let's face it, the Germans were rather aware of the
Why did they put the UMA up there? That's funny.
Climate in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. They wouldn't.
After all, it was not so far away on the map, and the Germans also had experience fighting the Imperial Russian Army in World War I.
That is a good point. Yes, the Germans did fight against Russia in World War I, and they won.
Second, the Germans suffered high losses from the get-go. This is even more crucial if we could.
Really? That's interesting. I did not know that.
Consider that the Wehrmacht in summer 1941 was very likely at its peak in capabilities. Very high morale from the various victories prior to Operation Barbarossa, and additionally a large amount of experience, well-maintained equipment, and various other factors. Yet,
but of course they were lacking resources, so like oil, for example, they used a lot of their oil up. So I guess maybe you could make an argument that this wasn't their peak from a resources perspective.
The Germans very soon realized that fighting against the...
And around this time, I think the British took over Iraq and Ethiopia. Wait, that has nothing to do with the Wehrmacht. I don't know what I'm talking about. Ignore that, please.
The Red Army was different. Despite the surprise achieved along the breadth of the front and the tremendous numbers of prisoners taken, Soviet forces resisted tenaciously in various places, and the casualties of German units involved in the initial battles were among the highest in the war.
Really?
Although the Wehrmacht advanced deeply into Soviet territory, this came at a high price. Operation Barbarossa exacted a huge toll on the German army, with more men killed in July 1941, the second month of Barbarossa, than in any other month of the war until December 1942, during the Battle of Stalingrad. And it's crucial to remember here that the German troops were at the peak in their training, morale, and experience at this point. This meant that losses affected usually the best German combat troops, so the losses affected the men fighting, not the guys in the rear. This makes it rather apparent that by the time General Winter showed up, that the Wehrmacht had already sustained significant losses by the...
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, they lost their best soldiers and some of their best, most trained soldiers. And now they're just stuck with troops that aren't as good.
Red Army.
Yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense.
General Winter stopped the Wehrmacht is wrong. It ignores the fact that the German...
I mean, I wish they would have went over a lot. Wish they would have went in more depth in this, because this is probably one of the biggest. This is the biggest myth I've ever seen on here. Ever. So I just wish they would have went more depth about this one.
German leadership misjudged the strength and resilience of the Red Army, and as such assumed it could break the Red Army before winter kicked in. Did the winter affect the Wehrmacht negatively? Yes. But when the winter hit, the Wehrmacht had already suffered high losses. As such, the winter did not stop the Wehrmacht. It was just another nail in the coffin of Operation Barbarossa. And finally, we need a short discussion about the foreign economic aid provided by the USA and the United Kingdom to the Soviet Union, better known as Lend-Lease. Depending on who you ask, Lend-Lease did not help at all, or it prevented the collapse of the Soviet Union.
Do people not have like a more of a centrist view? Because for me, for example, I believe I talked about this in another episode, by the way, in the series of the Resource War, where it talks about Lend-Lease. I talked about that. But yeah, I definitely think Lend-Lease. If if there was no Lend-Lease, the war would probably go on for another year or maybe even longer. But I don't think it won the war. I think they would have won the war no matter what, unless the Germans completely annihilate the Soviets at Stalingrad. And even if they did, the Soviets still could have won.
And in this case, the scholars are quite divided on the topic. First, the military historian Glantz notes, if Western allies had not provided equipment and invaded Northwest Europe, Stalin and his commanders might have taken 12 to 18 months longer to finish off the Wehrmacht, which is in stark contrast to the views of the Russian historian Boris Sokolov. As a whole, one can reach the conclusion.
But think about this. Okay, wait a minute.
To the views of the Russian historian Boris Sokolov.
Russian historian? Wouldn't it make more sense for a Russian to have the narrative that the Russians didn't need Lend-Lease and that they were just really good? Wouldn't that make sense? So just saying there might be a bit of bias there.
As a whole, one can reach the conclusion.
But again, I don't know anything yet, so.
That without their Western supplies, the Soviet Union not only could not have won the Great
Whoa, what?
War, but even could not have resisted German aggression.
Oh, I thought they were gonna say that the USSR would be fine without it. Really?
That it was not able to produce sufficient quantities of weapons and combat equipment and provide them with fuel and ammunition. There are many problems in assessing the importance of Lend-Lease, even leaving out political views. Since the Western Allies provided a lot of high-quality resources and equipment, it is harder to calculate the weight of transport or communication resources, harder still to evaluate the importance of explosives, high-octane fuel, or aluminium. Most difficult of all is factoring the importance of aid to the Soviet home front, which sustained Soviet production and recruitment and prevented discontent. Another major problem is to judge the importance of Lend-Lease on the moral and stability of the Soviet economy. The first installment of wartime Allied aid that reached the Soviet Union in 1942, although small by later standards, amounted to some 5% Soviet gross national.
Wait, what? Allied aid that reached the Soviet Union, although small. Well, that is a lot. I've never heard of GNP before, but does it mean gross national product?
Product.
Oh, wait, they just say
standards amounted to some 5% Soviet gross national product in the.
Well, they just say GDP. Doesn't that mean the same thing?
Yeah. In other words,
I've never heard of this before, so I don't know. I'm just assuming.
Lend-Lease was stabilizing. We cannot measure the distance of the Soviet economy from the point of collapse in 1942. But it seems beyond doubt the collapse was near. Without Lend-Lease, it would have been nearer.
What time in 1942? What? I wish I knew what time they were talking about so I could actually properly argue for this, or argue in favor of it, even. Let's see.
Another crucial aspect is that due to Lend-Lease, the Soviet Union could focus on producing weapons like.
Well, by 1942, that was about the same time where the factories that were moved to the Urals in 1941 started to work. So I think that's why they didn't collapse, because that's when because around 1942, that's when their industry started to work again. Which is the reason why they produce so many 34s.
Tanks and artillery.
Right? Yeah.
Whereas the Western powers supplied special equipment like radios and trucks that were of better quality. This allowed for economies of scale, as such as Soviet Union could produce more in less time. Hence, I think that Lend-Lease had an important influence on the success of the Red Army in World War II, especially in combination with the psychological impact, stabilization of the economy, and the manpower issue. Without Lend-Lease, it is rather apparent that the victory for the Red Army would have been harder, since less tanks and other weapons would have to be substituted with more men. Additionally, less or lower quality radios would have limited Soviet combat capability, as would have lower quality fuel reduced the quality of aircraft. And likely the compound effect of this might have allowed the Wehrmacht to catch its breath more often and thus inflict higher losses and draw out the war more and more. As such, my conclusion is that Lend-Lease was important for the Red Army in winning the war. It might have won without it, yet the potential post-war Soviet Union would have been more scarred than the historical war.
Yeah, I agree with military history visualized on this one.
To conclude, many myths about the Red Army contain a kernel of truth, yet quite often they are oversimplified and unnuanced tropes. This might be enough for lackluster documentaries, clickbait journalism, and edgy teenagers.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Like, there's all these stupid memes, or I see these myths all the time. And it's just like, come on, that's a myth. You should know that. That's ridiculous.
Yet I think we can do better. And if you want to support high-quality productions, be sure to check out the 16 Days in Berlin project by Real Time History, which is the first major history project that I support and will take part in. Thanks to Roman for providing valuable sources and also discussing the initial list and adding the unlimited manpower myth to it. Also thank you to Riens for providing feedback on the preemptive war debate.
Okay, well, that was top 7 Red Army myths. That was actually, that was a pretty good video, not going to lie. Had a lot of great points that I definitely agree with. But wow, that was pretty long compared to the videos we usually watch. But yeah, let me know what you want me to react to next time. Because I read every single comment, so if you make a comment about me reacting to something, I will see it, right? So and I will most likely probably react to it. So, anyways, thank you all for watching. Go check out this video on your own if you want. I don't know, their channel. I really like their channel. You can check it out on your own, whatever. But yeah, goodbye.